Commander Rex Martinez was having what he generously called a Tuesday when the emergency transmission crackled through his ship's comm system. The coffee was terrible. His navigation officer had somehow managed to plot a course through 3 separate asteroid fields, and now his communication array was picking up what sounded like someone having a complete mental breakdown. Mayday, Mayday, this is Research Station Kepler-7, requesting immediate assistance from any Terran vessels in the sector. The voice belonged to Dr. Luna Park, and she sounded like someone who had just discovered that her pet goldfish was actually a miniature kraken. We have a situation that requires immediate command-level intervention. Rex rubbed his temples. In his 15 years of deep space operations, he'd learned that when xenobiologists use the word situation, it usually meant something with too many teeth had gotten loose in the laboratory. This is Commander Martinez aboard the TCS Reasonable Doubt. What's your status, Doc? There was a pause that lasted just long enough for Rex to wonder if Dr. Park had been eaten mid-transmission. Then, Commander, I need you to promise me you won't think I've lost my mind when I tell you this. Doc, last month I had to explain to High Command why my crew accidentally started a religious war by sneezing near a sacred fungus. Try me. We found Vortac eggs. Rex nearly choked on his coffee. Vorthacs were the galaxy's apex nightmare fuel. 8 feet of armored killing machine with a taste for anything that moved and a complete inability to distinguish between prey and everything else in the universe. The last confirmed Vorthac sighting had resulted in the evacuation of an entire star system. Please tell me you immediately jettisoned them into the nearest star, Rex said, though something in Dr. Park's tone suggested this was not going to be a story with a sensible ending. They my hatched, Commander. Rex set down his coffee cup very carefully, and have imprinted on us. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when someone's brain needs to completely reboot its understanding of how the universe works. Rex stared at the comm panel as if it had just informed him that gravity was actually optional. Come again, Doc. The cubs think we're their parents, Commander. They follow us around, they purr when we pet them, and this morning I watched Private Chen teach one of them to play fetch with a plasma rifle. Dr. Park's voice had the strained quality of someone trying very hard not to laugh or cry, or possibly both. Commander, these things are supposed to be the galaxy's most feared predators, and right now one of them is taking a nap in my lap while I scratch behind its ears. Rex looked out at the stars and wondered if there was some cosmic joke he wasn't getting. Doc, how many other species know about this? Well, Ambassador Glixnorp from the Trembling Tentacle Coalition happened to be conducting a routine inspection when the eggs hatched. He's currently locked in his shuttle, broadcasting emergency codes to half the galaxy, and I'm pretty sure he started molting from stress. Rex closed his eyes. The Trembling Tentacle Coalition got nervous when humans sneezed too loudly. If they'd witnessed baby Vorthacs treating humans like beloved family members, the entire galactic political structure was probably having a collective aneurysm. Commander, Dr. Park continued, I think we might have accidentally broken the galaxy. Rex was still processing the implications of domesticated baby death machines when his long-range scanners lit up like a Christmas tree having an epileptic seizure. 17 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace around Research Station Kepler-7, and judging by their energy signatures, at least half of them were pointing enough firepower at the station to turn it into a very expensive cloud of glowing particles. Commander Martinez, came a new transmission, this one crackling with the kind of authority that suggested its owner had never been told no and wasn't planning to start now. This is Admiral Glixnorp of the Trembling Tentacle Coalition Emergency Response Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, emergency session number... Hold on. What number are we up to now? 73, sir, came a helpful voice in the background. Right. Emergency session 73. You are ordered to maintain a safe distance while we sterilize this abomination before it can spread. Rex raised an eyebrow. Emergency session 73. The Galactic Council had held 72 emergency sessions in the past 6 hours? That had to be some kind of record, and not the good kind. Admiral, with respect, those are human civilians on that station. You can't just blow them up because they're having a parenting crisis. Commander, you clearly don't understand the severity of this situation. Admiral Glixnorp's voice had the quality of someone explaining why the apocalypse was actually quite reasonable when you thought about it. Vorthacs are not just predators. They are the predators. For the past 3,000 years, the mere rumor of a Vorthac sighting has caused entire sectors to evacuate. My own great-great-grandmother lost 2 legs and a favorite tentacle to a Vorthac, and that was just from looking at one wrong. Rex pulled up the Vorthac files on his computer. The images alone were enough to make his coffee curdle. 8 feet of armored nightmare with claws that could cut through battleship hull plating, and a jaw that unhinged like a snake's but with significantly more teeth. The behavioral notes were even worse. Highly aggressive. Attacks on sight. No known instances of non-lethal encounters. Recommend immediate evacuation of any system with confirmed Vorthak presence. But Admiral, Rex said, these are babies, cubs. They're probably no bigger than house cats. House cats with retractable plasma claws and an instinctive knowledge of 17 different ways to kill you, Admiral Glicksnorp snapped. Commander, the Theological Council of Sixes is calling this a sign of the end times. The crystalline monks have declared it a divine punishment for our sins. And the Hive Mind Collective has actually achieved consensus for the first time in recorded history. And what they've agreed on is that humanity needs to be quarantined before you accidentally domesticate something that eats planets. Rex was starting to get the picture. So what you're saying is, the galaxy is freaking out. The galaxy is having what your species would call a complete and utter meltdown, Admiral Glicksnorp confirmed. Do you have any idea what the political implications are here? If humans can somehow tame Vorthak cubs, what's next? Are you going to start raising pet black holes? Domesticated supernovas? The economic ramifications alone are giving the Trade Federation collective heart attacks. In the background, Rex could hear what sounded like 17 different species all trying to have nervous breakdowns in their native languages simultaneously. It was like listening to a very upset zoo having an existential crisis. Admiral, I think you might be overreacting. Overreacting. Admiral Glicksnorp's voice hit frequencies that probably qualified as a weapon in some sectors. Commander, there are 3 Vorthak cubs on that station who think humans are their mommy and daddy. When they grow up, they're going to be the size of small buildings with the firepower of a battlecruiser and the loyalty of a golden retriever. Do you understand what that means? Rex was starting to, and it was giving him a headache. It means humanity accidentally discovered how to make friends with the galaxy's bogeyman. Exactly, and that, Commander, is the most terrifying sentence anyone has spoken in 3,000 years. 2 hours later, Rex was docking at Research Station Kepler-7, while Admiral Glicksnorp's fleet maintained what the Admiral had called a respectfully terrified distance. Rex had to admit, as he walked through the airlock, that he was more than a little curious to see what all the fuss was about. The first thing that hit him was the sound. Instead of the screams of terror and sounds of carnage he'd been expecting, he heard something that sounded suspiciously like purring. Loud purring. The kind of purring that vibrated through the deck plating and made his teeth itch. Commander Martinez! Dr. Park appeared around the corner, looking frazzled but oddly cheerful. She was carrying what appeared to be an oversized milk bottle and wearing a lab coat that had been shredded in a way that suggested either a very enthusiastic paper shredder or something with very sharp claws and no understanding of personal property. Doc, Rex said carefully, please tell me that purring sound is coming from the air recycling system having a malfunction. Oh, that's just Princess Whiskers. She's napping in the main lab. Dr. Park said this with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather, not the sleeping habits of a baby apocalypse beast. Rex followed Dr. Park through the station, noting the claw marks in the walls that were definitely not standard issue, and the fact that someone had apparently reinforced the door frames with what looked like battleship armor plating. So, Rex said, stepping carefully around what appeared to be the mangled remains of a security drone, how exactly did you end up babysitting the galaxy's worst nightmare? Well, we were conducting a routine xenoarchaeological survey on Kepler-7b when we found the nest. 3 eggs, each about the size of a basketball, in what looked like an abandoned cave system. We brought them back to the station for analysis, and then they started hatching. Dr. Park paused to adjust her grip on the bottle. The first one out took one look at Private Chen and started making these little chirping sounds. Chen, bless his heart, immediately started cooing at it like it was a lost kitten. They rounded another corner, and Rex got his first look at one of the galaxy's most feared predators. His brain needed a moment to process what he was seeing. The creature was about the size of a golden retriever, if golden retrievers were covered in midnight black scales that shifted between colors like oil on water. It had 6 legs, each ending in paws that were clearly designed for both running and disemboweling, and a head that was unmistakably reptilian but somehow managed to look adorable despite having approximately 47 too many teeth. Most importantly, it was currently engaged in what appeared to be a very serious game of tug-of-war, with Private Chen using what Rex recognized as a plasma rifle. Chen, Dr. Park called, we have company. The young private looked up and grinned, still holding one end of the plasma rifle, while the Vorthak cub gripped the other end in its jaws and wagged its entire body like an overexcited puppy. Oh, hey, Commander. Want to meet Destroyer? He's really good at fetch, but he keeps trying to fetch things that are bolted down. As if summoned by his name, Destroyer released the plasma rifle and bounded over to Rex, with the enthusiasm of a dog greeting its favorite human. Rex found himself being thoroughly sniffed by something that, according to every military manual he'd ever read, should have immediately tried to eat his face off. Instead, Destroyer made a sound that was halfway between a purr and a chirp, then rolled over and exposed his belly for scratches. He wants belly rubs, Private Shen explained helpfully. They all do. It's like they're hardwired to trust humans completely. Rex stared down at the upside-down baby death machine that was now making what could only be described as happy little trilling sounds. Against his better judgment, he reached down and scratched Destroyer's belly. The purring that resulted was so loud it rattled the light fixtures. "Doc," Rex said, still scratching, "I think I'm beginning to understand why the galaxy is having a nervous breakdown." "Oh, you haven't met Fluffy yet," Dr. Park said brightly. "She figured out how to use the food replicator this morning. She's been making snacks for everyone." Rex looked around at the claw-marked walls, the reinforced door frames, and the baby Vorthak who was now trying to lick his hand with a tongue that was definitely not designed for showing affection. "Doc," he said, "we might have a problem that's bigger than just breaking the galaxy." "What's that?" Rex watched as Destroyer attempted to play dead, rolling around on his back while making sounds of pure joy. "I think we're all going to get attached to them too." Chief Analyst Murphy found Rex an hour later in the station's small cafeteria, staring contemplatively at a cup of coffee while a creature that looked like a cross between a panther and a small dragon napped in his lap. Fluffy had apparently decided that Rex was her new favorite human and had claimed him accordingly. "Commander," Murphy said, settling into the opposite chair with the careful movements of someone who'd spent the last 30 years thinking about how alien species could kill him in increasingly creative ways. "We need to talk." Rex looked up from where he'd been absently scratching behind Fluffy's ears. The Vorthak cub was making a sound like a diesel engine having happy dreams. "Let me guess. The political ramifications of humanity accidentally domesticating the galaxy's apex predator are slightly more complicated than I initially thought." "Oh, it's worse than that," Murphy said, pulling out a tablet that was blinking with more urgent notifications than Rex had ever seen on a single device. "Much worse. I've been running projections based on what we know about Vorthak biology, human-animal bonding patterns, and galactic political structures. Commander, we haven't just broken the galaxy. We've accidentally stumbled onto something that could reshape the entire balance of power in known space." Rex raised an eyebrow. Murphy had a gift for understatement that was almost supernatural. When he said something was much worse, it usually meant somewhere between catastrophically bad and universe-endingly terrible. "Explain it to me like I'm a simple ship commander who just wants to drink his coffee in peace," Rex said. Murphy activated his tablet, and a holographic display materialized above the table. It showed a standard Vorthak adult, 8 feet of armored nightmare that looked like it could bite through a star destroyer and ask for seconds. "Adult Vorthaks," Murphy began, "are essentially living weapons. Their scales can deflect military-grade plasma fire. Their claws can cut through reinforced titanium like paper. They're faster than our best fighters, stronger than our heaviest mechs, and smart enough to use tactics. One adult Vorthak can single-handedly take down a battalion of trained soldiers." "I'm with you so far," Rex said, though Fluffy's contented purring was making it hard to take the briefing seriously. "Now, here's where it gets interesting. Vorthak cubs imprint on whoever they identify as their caregiver during their first 72 hours of life. Once they imprint, that bond is permanent and absolute. They will do anything to protect their adopted pack, and I mean anything." Murphy swiped to the next display, showing what appeared to be psychological profiles and behavioral analyses. "Commander, these cubs don't just like us. They've adopted humanity as their species. As far as their developing brains are concerned, humans are their family, their pack, their tribe. When they reach maturity, they're going to view any threat to humans as a threat to themselves." Rex was beginning to see where this was going, and he didn't like it. "Murphy, please, tell me you're not about to suggest what I think you're going to suggest. I've run the numbers 17 different ways, and they all come out the same." Murphy's voice had the tone of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. "If these cubs reach maturity with their human bonding intact, humanity will effectively have 3 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators as completely loyal bodyguards, and that's just the beginning." The holographic display shifted to show galactic trade routes, territorial boundaries, and military deployments. "The Galactic Council's power structure is based entirely on the assumption that no single species can achieve military dominance," Murphy continued. The Klaxons have superior technology but low numbers. The hive minds have numbers but inferior equipment. The Crystal Collective has economic power but no military strength. Everyone stays in balance because everyone has something the others need, and something the others fear. Rex looked down at Fluffy, who had apparently decided that his hand made an excellent pillow and was drooling slightly on his uniform. An adult Vorthax upset that balance. Adult Vorthax obliterate that balance, Murphy corrected. Commander, there are currently fewer than 50 confirmed adult Vorthax in the entire galaxy, and they're all wild, uncontrolled, and equally dangerous to everyone. But if humans can raise them from cubs, we could theoretically have an army of loyal apex predators, Rex finished. Not just an army. A completely devoted, unquestionably loyal, impossibly dangerous, extended family, and every other species in the galaxy knows it. Murphy swiped to a new display showing emergency communications from across known space. The Trembling Tentacle Coalition has mobilized their entire fleet. The Rigid Bureaucracy Alliance is implementing Continuity Protocol 7, which they've never used before, not even during the Machine Wars. 3 different species have petitioned the Galactic Council to declare humanity a galactic threat. Rex felt a headache building behind his eyes. And the others? The warrior caste Klaxons are having a theological crisis because their entire culture is based on being the galaxy's premier warriors, and the idea that humans might have access to creatures that could defeat them in combat is causing mass existential breakdowns. The Economic Council of 12 is in emergency session because they're trying to figure out how to price insurance policies for a species that might have pet apocalypse beasts, and the Pacifist Federation is seriously considering breaking their 10,000-year vow of nonviolence just to prevent what they're calling the weaponization of adorability. Rex stared at the displays, watching trade routes flash red as various species implemented emergency protocols. So what you're telling me is that because 3 baby Vorthax think we're their parents, the entire galaxy is preparing for war. Not preparing for war, Commander. Preparing to prevent a war they think we're going to start. Murphy deactivated the holographic display and leaned back in his chair. Because from their perspective, humanity just acquired the galaxy's ultimate weapon, and we did it by accident, while the cubs were taking naps and playing fetch. Fluffy stirred in Rex's lap, opened one bright golden eye and made a soft chirping sound before settling back to sleep. Murphy, Rex said quietly, what happens if we just don't tell anyone that Vorthax can be domesticated? What if we keep this quiet? Murphy gestured toward the window, where the lights of Admiral Glixnorp's fleet were clearly visible against the stars. Commander, 73 emergency council sessions, a dozen mobilized fleets, and approximately half the galaxy's military forces currently surrounding the station. I think that ship has sailed, been boarded by pirates, and crashed into a moon. Rex looked down at the peacefully sleeping creature in his lap, then back at Murphy. So what you're saying is, we're all doomed. No, Commander, Murphy said with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. What I'm saying is everyone else thinks they are. Rex was still processing the full scope of their predicament when the station's alarm system decided to have what sounded like a mechanical seizure. Red lights flashed, sirens wailed, and somewhere in the distance, something that sounded suspiciously like Princess Whiskers was making noises that definitely weren't purring anymore. Commander, Dr. Park's voice crackled through the intercom with the kind of panic usually reserved for imminent catastrophic decompression. We have a problem. Several problems, actually. Big ones with guns. Rex gently moved Fluffy from his lap to Murphy's. The cub transferred her affections without missing a beat in her nap and headed for the command center. Through the viewports, he could see that Admiral Glixnorp's respectfully terrified distance had apparently shrunk considerably. Boarding pods were launching from the Coalition fleet, and they were coming in fast. Admiral Glixnorp, this is Commander Martinez, Rex said into the comm. You're violating Terran space and endangering civilian researchers. Stand down immediately. Commander, came the Admiral's reply, his voice tight with the kind of determination that suggested he'd rather eat his own tentacles than back down. By emergency authorization of Galactic Council Resolution 847 Omega Terror, we are implementing immediate containment protocols. The specimens will be transferred to secure Council custody for indefinite containment. Over my dead body, Dr. Park's voice cut in from across the command center, where she was rapidly typing commands into what appeared to be every computer terminal simultaneously. Those cubs aren't specimens, they're babies, and if you think I'm letting you psychopaths stuff them in some containment facility for the rest of their lives, you've clearly never met a xenobiologist who's gone 3 days without sleep. Rex was about to respond when the first boarding pod made contact with the station's docking ring with a clang that reverberated through the hull. Then the second pod hit, then the third. "Murphy," Rex said, "please tell me the station has some kind of defensive systems." "Well, it has blast doors," Murphy replied, still cradling the sleeping Fluffy. "And a really stern-worded sign about unauthorized entry. Why?" The answer came in the form of approximately 20 Galactic peacekeepers, in full combat armor, streaming through the main airlock. They moved with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who'd done this 1,000 times before, spreading out in perfect formation and scanning for targets with weapons that looked like they could punch holes through mountains. "Attention, station personnel," their leader announced through his helmet's external speakers. "This is Peacekeeper Captain Vexstar of the 47th Emergency Response Battalion. You are ordered to surrender all specimens and evacuate immediately. Failure to comply will result in immediate detention and possible conversion to component atoms." Rex looked at Dr. Park, who had gone very pale. Then he looked at Murphy, who was still holding Fluffy and had the expression of someone doing very complex mathematics in his head. Then he looked back at the peacekeepers, who were advancing down the corridor with their weapons raised. What happened next was going to haunt Captain Vexstar's dreams for the next several decades. Princess Whiskers appeared at the end of the corridor. She was no longer the size of a house cat. Sometime in the past few hours, she had apparently hit a growth spurt and was now roughly the size of a small pony, but with significantly more teeth and what appeared to be retractable claws that glowed with their own internal energy. Her scales had darkened to a deep midnight black that seemed to absorb light, and her eyes had developed the kind of predatory focus that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. She took one look at the armed soldiers advancing toward her humans, and something in her brain that had been waiting her entire short life for this moment finally clicked into place. The sound she made wasn't a roar, wasn't a growl, wasn't anything that most species had a word for. It was the sound that nightmares make when they're having nightmares of their own. It was the sound that had caused entire civilizations to flee their home systems, rather than risk encountering its source. Captain Vexstar, who had faced down everything from insurgent pirates to rogue AI constructs, took one look at Princess Whiskers and made a decision that probably saved his life. He ran. His squad, trained to follow his lead in all situations, followed suit. Princess Whiskers, apparently interpreting this as some kind of game, gave chase. What followed was the most lopsided military engagement in recorded galactic history. 20 fully armed, extensively trained Galactic peacekeepers in powered combat armor fled through the corridors of Research Station Kepler-7, pursued by what was essentially an overgrown puppy with apocalypse-level weapons for claws. The peacekeepers' energy weapons, designed to stop everything, from armored vehicles to small buildings, bounced harmlessly off Princess Whiskers' scales. Their flashbang grenades just seemed to annoy her. Their tactical retreat protocols, developed over centuries of military science, proved utterly inadequate when dealing with something that could run up walls, across ceilings, and apparently through solid bulkheads when she felt like it. Rex, Dr. Park, and Murphy watched the chaos unfold through the station's security cameras with the kind of fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. "Is she?" Rex began. "Playing," Dr. Park confirmed. "Look at her body language. Ears forward, tail up, that bouncing gait. She thinks this is the best game ever." On the security feed, Princess Whiskers had cornered 3 peacekeepers in what used to be the station's main laboratory. Instead of doing what everyone expected, namely turning them into bite-sized snacks, she was apparently trying to get them to play fetch with one of their own weapons, which she had somehow acquired and was now offering to them with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever presenting a stick. "Commander Martinez," Admiral Glicksnorp's voice crackled through the comm, now several octaves higher than before. "What exactly is happening on that station?" Rex looked at the security feed, where Destroyer and Fluffy had now joined the game and were herding the remaining peacekeepers toward what appeared to be a makeshift play area they'd constructed out of overturned furniture and military equipment. "Admiral," Rex said slowly, "I think your peacekeepers are being adopted." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when someone's entire world view collapses and their brain needs to rebuild itself from scratch. "Come again," Admiral Glicksnor finally managed. "The Cubs think your soldiers are new playmates," Dr. Park explained helpfully. "They've been trying to initiate pack bonding behaviors for the past 10 minutes. Oh look, Princess Whiskers is grooming Sergeant Claxton's helmet. That's actually a sign of deep affection in their species." Through the security feed they could see the massive Klaxon warrior standing perfectly still, while a creature that could theoretically bite his head off was carefully licking his helmet with what appeared to be genuine care and attention. "This is impossible," Admiral Glixnor whispered. "Vorthax don't play. They don't groom, they don't make friends." "Wild ones don't," Murphy said, finally speaking up, while Fluffy continued to nap peacefully in his arms. "But these aren't wild Vorthax. These are human-raised Vorthax. And human-raised predators apparently think everyone wants to be part of their pack." Rex watched as Destroyer attempted to teach a group of peacekeepers how to play tug-of-war using what appeared to be a plasma cannon. The soldiers, to their credit, were gamely going along with it, though their body language suggested they weren't entirely sure what was happening to them. "Admiral," Rex said into the comm, "I think we need to have a very different conversation than the one we were planning to have." "What kind of conversation?" Rex looked around at the chaos, the confused soldiers, and the 3 Vorthak cubs who had apparently decided that the Galactic peacekeepers were their new favorite people. The kind where we figure out what happens when the galaxy's most feared predators decide that everyone they meet is automatically part of their family. 6 months later, Rex was filing his final incident report while sitting in what had formerly been Research Station Kepler-7's main laboratory and was now something that could only be described as the galaxy's most heavily fortified daycare center. Princess Whiskers, who had grown to roughly the size of a small shuttle and developed the disturbing ability to purr in harmonics that could be heard 3 decks away, was sprawled across half the room, apparently using a decommissioned Galactic Council cruiser as a chew toy. The cruiser in question had been a diplomatic gift from the Trembling Tentacle Coalition, who had discovered that trying to negotiate with humans while 3 adult Vorthax lounged nearby like oversized house cats was an experience that challenged every assumption they'd ever made about the nature of power, politics, and the proper relationship between predators and prey. Status Report, Day 183 of the Human Verticock Accord implementation. Rex dictated to his recording device while carefully stepping around Destroyer, who was teaching a group of junior diplomats from the Rigid Bureaucracy Alliance how to play what appeared to be 3-dimensional fetch using gravity generators. The galaxy has officially adapted to the new normal, which is to say, everyone has collectively agreed to pretend that this makes sense. He paused as Fluffy wandered past, now roughly the size of a small building, and somehow managing to look both absolutely terrifying and completely adorable as she carefully carried a delegation of crystalline monks to their transport ship. The monks had requested the ride, apparently having decided that traveling by Vorthak was not only the safest method of transportation in known space, but also provided an excellent opportunity for meditation on the nature of unexpected friendship. "The Galactic Council emergency sessions have been reduced to a mere 3 per day," Rex continued, "which Ambassador Glixnorp assures me represents significant progress toward what he calls managed galactic hysteria. The Economic Council of 12 has established an entirely new currency exchange rate, based on what they're calling Vorthak proximity insurance, and at least 6 species have petitioned to establish permanent diplomatic outposts within what they're calling the human safety zone." Through the reinforced windows, Rex could see the bustling activity that had transformed the space around the former research station. What had started as a handful of ships maintaining respectful distance had evolved into something resembling a small city. Trade vessels, diplomatic shuttles, research ships, and what appeared to be at least 3 different species versions of food trucks were arranged in careful orbits around the station. The reason for all this activity was wandering around the station's new extended habitat domes, 12 more Vorthak cubs from 3 additional nests that had been discovered by human colonies across the sector. Rex had given up asking whether these discoveries were entirely accidental after the 5th nest turned up conveniently close to a human settlement. "Dr. Park has been promoted to Director of Interspecies Adoption Services," Rex noted, watching through the window as the good doctor supervised what appeared to be a playdate between Vorthok cubs and a group of young Klaxon warriors. The warriors, it turned out, were the only species in the galaxy physically capable of wrestling with baby Vorthoks without immediately surrendering, and both species seemed to enjoy the challenge. Her official duties now include managing 17 different research projects, coordinating with 43 diplomatic missions, and somehow preventing the cubs from accidentally conquering small planets during field trips. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission, and Admiral Glixnorp's face appeared on the main screen. He looked significantly less stressed than he had 6 months ago, though his tentacles still twitched whenever one of the cubs wandered into view. "Commander Martinez," the Admiral said, "I'm transmitting the latest Council updates. The Pacifist Federation has officially withdrawn their threat to break their vow of non-violence, mostly because they've determined that it's impossible to commit violence against anything while Vorthax are present. since the Cubs interpret all aggressive actions as invitations to play. The warrior caste Klaxons have established a new military tradition called honor through companionship, which appears to involve competitive snuggling with apex predators. Rex nodded, making notes. And the trade implications? Unprecedented, Admiral Glixnorp replied, his voice taking on the tone of someone who had given up trying to understand economics and was now just along for the ride. Turns out, when your cargo ships are escorted by creatures that make pirates flee to other galaxies entirely, shipping insurance becomes remarkably affordable. The Merchant Guild is reporting profit margins they describe as aggressively impossible, and at least 3 different species have established permanent trade routes specifically to pass through human space. Through the window, Rex watched as Princess Whiskers delicately accepted a tribute of exotic fruits from a delegation of traders who approached her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious ceremonies. She accepted their offering with gracious dignity, then promptly tried to share the fruits with everyone in the immediate vicinity, including a maintenance droid that definitely wasn't designed to eat organic matter. What about the broader political situation? Rex asked. Admiral Glixnorp's image flickered as he consulted his notes. The Galactic Council has officially redesignated humanity from minor species with curious habits to major power with terrifyingly adorable strategic assets. Your species now has permanent seats on 17 different committees, including the Committee for Preventing Accidental Galactic Domination, which was created specifically to deal with situations like this one. Rex raised an eyebrow. Accidental galactic domination? Commander, there are currently 47 Vorthax of various ages living in or around human settlements. They're all completely devoted to human welfare, they're all growing larger and more capable every day, and they all seem to think that anyone who's mean to humans needs to be taught better manners. Admiral Glixnorp paused as one of his own staff members wandered past his screen, being carried gently in the jaws of what appeared to be a juvenile Vorthax. 3 different species have petitioned to become human protectorates, not because they want our protection, but because they want the Cubs' protection. Rex looked around at the peaceful chaos surrounding him. Destroyer was now leading a conga line that included representatives from at least 8 different species. Fluffy had apparently decided to redecorate the diplomatic reception area and was carefully arranging furniture, with the assistance of a team of very patient crystalline engineers. Princess Whiskers had fallen asleep in the main corridor and was currently serving as a bridge for smaller species who needed to get from one side of the station to the other. So what you're telling me, Rex said slowly, is that humanity has accidentally become the galaxy's most powerful species because we're good with pets. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Commander. And the truly terrifying part? Admiral Glixnorp leaned closer to the screen, his voice dropping to a whisper. None of it was intentional. You didn't conquer anyone. You didn't threaten anyone. You didn't even try to gain political advantage. You just took care of some lost babies. And somehow, that's turned out to be the most effective path to galactic influence anyone's ever discovered. Rex finished his report and leaned back in his chair, watching as the unlikely family he'd somehow become part of continued their daily routine of accidentally reshaping interstellar politics through the simple act of being themselves. Final note, he dictated to his recording device. Request immediate reassignment to something simple and straightforward, like negotiating peace treaties between warring civilizations or defusing supernova bombs. Current assignment involves too many variables that purr, and I'm concerned I'm getting too attached to the job. He paused the recording and looked around at the controlled chaos that had become his new normal. Princess Whiskers had woken up and was now attempting to teach a group of teenage diplomats the proper technique for stalking maintenance droids. Destroyer had somehow convinced a delegation of trade representatives to join him in what appeared to be an elaborate game of hide-and-seek that involved the entire station. Fluffy was having what could only be described as a philosophical discussion with a crystalline monk about the nature of friendship, conducted entirely in purrs and harmonic resonances. Rex deleted the last part of his report. Actually, he said to the recording device, request assignment extension. Turns out accidentally running the galaxy's most unusual diplomatic station is exactly the kind of challenge I didn't know I wanted. Outside the window, a new ship was approaching the station. It was flying the colors of the distant Spiral Federation, a collection of species so far away that most galactic maps listed their territory as Here Be Dragons. As Rex watched, the ship's captain sent a transmission requesting permission to approach and deliver a tribute of rare minerals to the honored human caretakers and their noble companions. Rex smiled and opened a communication channel. After all, Princess Whiskers was always happy to meet new friends, and the galaxy could apparently always use a little more accidental diplomacy. "Welcome to Research Station Kepler 7, he said into the comm. "Please approach slowly and keep your weapons powered down. Our security staff takes friendship very seriously, and they're all approximately the size of small buildings.